Hello, everyone. My name is Paulette Andre, and today I am going to discuss as an existential approach versus or Gestalt approach. Um, this is based on the case of Olivia. The goals with Olivia when applying the existential approach. I believe the ultimate goal would be authenticity um, through other goals of self awareness, making responsible decisions, and ultimately finding meaning in her life and possibly the meaning of her life. She would be able to become her authentic self. When it comes to the Gestalt approach, um, it's in a similar fashion about reaching self awareness and personal responsibility, but more focused on the now than the then or the what if future. The role of the counselor in existential therapy, um, very warm, respectful, loving, empathetic, and the client is kind of, going with the flow, making those decisions, kind of directing therapy more than the actual therapist would. For Gestalt, the therapist is also warm and, empathetic and encouraging, but, also a bit confrontational, I guess they can be. Gestalt therapy or approach is not as free form as existential approaches. So there are some kind of roadmaps when using that approach. Um, let's see what interventions or techniques might be helpful for Olivia. I think when it comes to the existential approach, I would say interpretation, dream analysis, confrontation. As we mentioned before, empathy, encouragement. The Socratic dialogue, I think, would be very helpful for her, and attitude modification. I think well, based on the reading, Olivia has fallen into a slump, and I think modifying the way she views herself and the attitude she has towards her life and her experiences and her thoughts can help improve her life and her self awareness. For a Gestalt approach, converting questions to statements uh, forces her to take responsibility for her thoughts and her actions. Using personal pronouns, assuming responsibility, as I just said. The empty chair technique, I think, would be very good for her, especially when it comes to dealing with feelings. I know Gestalt is more of the right now, but it could open the door for some other feelings that may be influencing some decisions that she's making right now. Staying with the feeling and, of course, confrontation. For the existential approach, I actually think both approaches open the door for a biblical perspective. The existential approach is kind of like meaning of life, and it touches on a lot of points in the Bible. So does Gestalt, especially when it comes to holism. In a matter of fact, King and Ford kind of, mentioned that holism is basically a biblical concept. So I think both approaches open the door for a biblical perspective. Um, I believe, just like I said, how both of them open the door. I think they are compatible when it's applied to the client. Existential, God gave us free will to do with what we please, do what we will in our life. So it's on us to have the responsibility to make good choices. And those choices add or take away from the meaning of our lives. So I feel like existential would be compatible as well as Gestalt, you know. Looking at Olivia as a whole and looking at her past, her present, and her future, and just allowing her to explore what does that mean as far as biblically, how could she see herself growing, not just as a person and self-awareness, but also in a spiritual perspective. If I had to choose between the two, I would say existential, only because Olivia has issues from her past that she needs to work on. She already has goals that she has set for herself to be a better mom, to get her life in check, to be a little less lonely. So the Gestalt is kind of focus on, well, what are you going through right now? Divorce. All right, let's focus on that. But there are things from her childhood I think would be helpful, and kind of focusing on the future to give her hope and something to look forward to. Not to say that Gestalt wouldn't, but it's kind of more immediate. And while I do believe Olivia would benefit from immediate help, I do believe that she would need a whole picture and not just the current picture. So thank you for listening. And oh, Tan also wrote that this existential approach is best suited for those going through crises, like going through a divorce and grieving over the loss of her home and lifestyle, I should say. So that's another reason why I chose it. Thank you for listening and have a good one.